Welcome to Paul Lawson Chats, a podcast for helpers. In each episode, we'll hear stories from folks from various companies and organizations who are making a real difference by bringing positive change and infusing radical good into their workplaces, communities, and world. Hey y'all, it's Paul. Today I am with one of my incredible friends, Sonya Bohmann, who is the Executive Director of Construction Industry Alliance for Suicide Prevention. Sonya, how are you this morning?
Good morning. I'm happy to be here and chatting with you.
Good. It's a chilly. So you're over near the Philadelphia region, right?
Yes.
How far outside of Philly are you?
5 miles.
Oh, so you're right there.
I'm right there.
What's the
like on the outskirts.
What do you think is the best Philly cheesesteak?
Oh, interestingly enough, this question is often asked. I am not a Philly cheesesteak girl.
Okay.
There's a couple that Philly is famous from. They're lesser known, but I am a chicken cutlet, broccoli rabe, sharp provolone girl.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's new to me. All right.
With a long hot pepper. So when you come out here, I'm going to have to introduce you to that because that is a Philly secret. But
okay.
It is
that to
delicious.
me is like, and that's what I want to do. Like if I go into a new city, which granted and admittedly I haven't been to Philly yet, but I know. I when I go into a city, I want to try the stuff that the people who live there they get. You know,
right?
I prefer that over just the touristy, like here are the spots to go if you're a tourist. Like I don't want the tourist stuff. I want if you live here, what do you get?
The authentic stuff, right?
That's what I want. That's what I want. So that's awesome. Okay, but I'm sure. Sorry, I asked you the same question. I'm sure you've been asked a million
That's okay.
times.
It was one of my very first podcast questions that I did with CFMA when I did Chat with the Chair with Kevin Foley. It was literally like the first thing I did on this job.
Sure. Was, hey, you're from Philly. Tell me about your Philly cheesesteak preferences.
Yep. And I was like, oh no.
No, we're going to bypass that and go straight to this is the real stuff.
This is the real stuff.
I love that. Well, speaking of real, and we talked, you and I were together early this week when you were here in my neck of the woods in Columbus. Yeah. And you were here speaking, did a wonderful presentation for Ohio Asphalt Expo over in Polaris. And, you and I had lunch and we talked and you shared with me your journey of how you got here. And that's really the purpose of why I wanted to start this podcast, was to highlight people's story, people who I see as helpers. And you are absolutely a helper in our world, in our country, and the work that you're doing. And I think you have an amazing story, and I think it would just be incredible for folks to hear what are the pivot points in your life that got you where you're at over at CIASP, the work that you're doing in advocacy and leading in this space. How did you get started?
So, I mean, I feel like this is going to be a meandering story, but I will try to make it
I'm here for the journey. We all are. We're here.
As I can. I will very briefly sort of share this in many contexts, but I'm a loss survivor. I lost my sister to suicide. Oh my gosh, it's been almost 17 years now. And, it was a long journey with her. It was, and mental health struggles are not new to our family. My father was a bipolar manic depressive. My sister was bipolar. And so it was quite a journey for us. And when she died by suicide, it was not something that anyone in our family talked about. We hushed about it and whispered about it. And I just wasn't feeling like it was, I wasn't able to heal from it, I would say. And so I was working at a construction company, light construction, remodels, refreshes, facilities maintenance. And we were a baby company and young. And one of the things that as a leadership team, we said was, when we get big enough, we want to be bigger than the sum of our parts, really. And we want to have some social purpose. And part of that was that we started focusing on grassroots suicide prevention. just a tiny little local kind of charity where we raised some money and gave some scholarships out to kids going to college that were affected by mental health or suicide challenges.
Wow.
And
Okay.
that then led to serendipitously a conversation I was having during I was doing an interview with somebody, and this young woman said, "You should talk to my former boss. She volunteers with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention." So I ended up connecting
Huh.
with that woman and was instantly felt like that was my place and those were my people.
Yeah.
And did, you mentioned advocacy, and it's something that's always been a passion for me. And so I got to do an advocacy day for them in the state capitol. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is really where I get to take what felt like we weren't talking about and we were whispering about and nobody would acknowledge, and get to say, like,
Wow.
this is important and we can save other people. And so I volunteered for them, and I still do volunteer for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention in
Hmm.
their Philadelphia chapter.
Yeah.
And again, I feel like it's a long road, but as
Yeah.
part of that, AFSP was piloting a program with OSHA. They have an OSHA alliance, and they were piloting training for OSHA. And so as I was doing that, I got to kind of like get a little taste of that, sort of those two worlds coming together.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit. And
Hmm.
um, one of my
That threw
employees,
things for a loop
right?
a little
It
bit.
kind of, it made the world an odd place.
It
And
did.
we were doing everything on Zoom.
Yep.
And I heard about from one of my employees whose parent worked for a much larger construction company about a webinar that was hosted by CFMA, and it was going to be on mental health and suicide prevention. And I thought, well, great, because this is our social purpose. It's part of what I do in my volunteer world. Let me learn some more. So I jumped on this call, and there was this guy speaking. And I was like, oh my goodness, like this man, first of all, is brilliant. And second of all, I think like I want to be him. Like I love construction and I love like this piece of my world, the social purpose piece, but like he's doing that and I feel like he's probably getting paid for it.
Yeah.
Is that even possible? Um,
Yeah.
and I wrote his name down on a post-it note, and Cal has heard this story many times, but it was Cal Bayer. And so the front of the post-it note says Cal Bayer, and the back of the post-it note said preventconstructionsuicide.com.
Hmm.
And so I started following CIASP on socials. And when I would give that OSHA presentation, I would say, like, AFSP is a great resource. Here's a construction specific resource. They've got some really cool things. And I would integrate it into things that we were doing at work, and I was pulling down their information. And so they were in my LinkedIn feed all of the time,
Hmm.
right? And then I guess it was January of 2023. I was on my way to Seattle for a AFSP trip, and they bring their chapter leadership together once a year, and it was Seattle, so it was a long flight. And I brought a book with me that I read fairly often when life is kind of chaotic and you're not quite sure where to ground yourself. I'm a huge fan of Gabby Bernstein and The Universe Has Your Back.
I've got it on order.
Did you? It is so
Yeah.
good, Paul.
Yeah.
And it's not a cover to cover read. It's pick it up and read a little bit of it and then reground yourself kind
Yeah.
of book.
Yeah.
And really what it tells you is that the universe is constantly sending you signs, and the
Hmm.
universe can mean whether it's your faith, it's whatever connects you out there, right?
Right.
To that bigger thing.
Hmm.
It's constantly sending you signs, and you have to decide to be open to them, or you have to decide to be closed off to them, right? And as a loss survivor, I struggled with that for a really long time. Like I was angry that my sister wasn't sending me any signs. And then one day I was reading Gabby and I was clicking to do something else on my computer, and Linkin Park's song came on, the one about suicide. And
Wow.
I was like, oh, I think One More Light is the name of the song. And I was
Oh
like,
my gosh. I
okay,
know that
universe,
song.
holy
Yes.
moly. Okay, maybe you are sending me signs and I wasn't just ready for them.
Yeah.
So I try to kind of go back to Gabby's book when I feel like I can't like find my compass, right?
Mhm.
And we had done some great things in at work, and my volunteer stuff was going great, but you just sometimes things just don't feel like they're gelling.
Yeah.
So I read the book, came back, and I was doing some work on LinkedIn, pulling down some resumes that I had posted, and the job description for this position was sitting in my LinkedIn feed. And I was super busy that day because when you come off a long weekend of, being off a Friday and a Monday and travel and all those things, it's just not like I didn't want to spend time thinking about what was sitting in front of me.
Right.
But I texted a friend and I was like, "Hey, can you just like look at this?" And so they jumped on their own LinkedIn, and I was like, "They're like that's your dream job," and I'm like, "I kind of thought that too." They're like, "Well, what are you gonna do about it?" I'm like, "Well, I don't have time to do anything about it."
Right.
Finished my day, went home, and my son had youth group and at church, and I went with him, and I'm sitting there waiting for him to do his thing, and I was like, well, I got some time to kill. I'll spend some time on my laptop pulling down these resumes, getting it, catching back up, and it was still sitting in my LinkedIn feed. And your LinkedIn feed's a lot like your Facebook phase.
Yeah.
If you wanted to find something again, you'd never be able to
Good
find it,
luck.
right?
Right. Yeah. It's gone
But
in the
there it
weeds.
was,
Yeah.
right?
Incredible.
And I thought, okay, so maybe this really is a sign.
Yeah.
But I had been with a company that I was with for a decade, and I didn't have an updated resume, and I didn't have a cover letter,
Right.
and hadn't written one in years, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we had updated our resumes for just different things at work that we needed. So I quickly updated my resume and quickly wrote a cover letter with some encouragement of some of my mom friends, and I sent it in and I said, like, I think it's my dream job.
Yeah.
It takes my love for construction and my passion for suicide prevention, and it would marry the two of them.
Yep.
And the rest is history.
Yeah. And
So
then that
it will
was
be
it.
2 years in May that I have been with CIASP.
Oh my gosh, that story. So to me, I had like goosebumps when you told me the story because like the signs, all of it, they were peppered in. They were
Yeah.
like an undeniable like
Mhm.
so and you mentioned in passing too, you were saying like, you always had kind of an advocate's heart. Where did that is that was that from your family or was that from your upbringing or what where did that come from?
Yeah. So when I was growing up, my dad actually worked for a small business lobbying company. And so he worked for NFIB, which is the National Federation of Independent Businesses. And so that was always sort of something that was part of our dinner table conversation. Like, what does lobbying look like? And what does advocacy look like? And I'm a poli sci major. It always felt like it was the place for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's funny because as I'm talking to my kids who are, 20 and 15 right now
Mhm.
about what do you want to be when you grow up? Right. And my son said to me, he's like, how did you get, like, you were a poli sci major. What did you want to do with that? And then you've done all this other stuff, but now it feels like you're doing that. I said,
Yeah.
yeah, it kind of does actually. And maybe it's just one of those additional signs from the universe,
Yeah,
right?
to me,
That,
it is. It's just add another one in, right?
right.
I mean, it's been sign after sign after sign, and I think that's what's so cool. I think there's so many folks who sit out there who never stop to think about what are the signs out there,
Yeah.
and then I think a lot of we talked about this at lunch the other day, but I genuinely believe sincerely that even with as much negativity and division and all of that in the world, I still believe that everybody is capable of good. I
Mhm.
think they're capable of good. I think
Yeah.
they have to be, so a lot of folks need to be reinvited in, or they have to re-find that part of themselves. But I genuinely believe that people have that in themselves. And I think hearing stories like yours, and the folks that we are around, like in our circle, who've decided this is just what we want to dive into. This is our life. We see people like, and I feel like Cal gets brought up so far each episode. I think has brought
Of
Cal up.
course.
So as he should, and he's, and I hope
Right.
he hears this and knows like this is part of his legacy and what he's built. But I think I can't get past the idea that that's such a world changing basic element we've got to get back to. It's just empowering people in their goodness and their care for people around them, you know. And just your story, I believe, perfectly taps into that, like what you've done. And you chased, once you woke up to those little signs, you're like,
Yeah.
let's do this thing. It's go time. Let's do it.
It felt very easy, and it felt like it's almost like coming home, right?
Yeah.
And you know, I'm so lucky that the board that I work for also is full of helpers, as you say,
Yeah.
because they're just incredible, incredible people who took a chance on someone who really didn't have maybe the experience that looked traditional on paper as a nonprofit executive director.
Sure.
And really we feel like we mesh well together. We're doing exciting, amazing things.
Yeah.
They're tolerant of my zany ideas. And so finding a group of people too, when you're making a transition from corporate America to something like this,
Yeah.
it's the group of people that make it possible also. And finding my people like you and Cal and Kara and
Hmm.
all of these amazing people that are out there doing this work and are sometimes those unsung heroes, right?
Yeah.
And you know, if not to be corny, but if you think about Mr. Rogers and he says, whenever there's a catastrophe, you look for the helpers, right?
Where do you think I came with the
See, I
terminology? I
love
keep
it.
coming back to that. It's like, and
Yeah.
it's almost edging on cliche, but I don't want to let it be because it's so pure and good. I believe that it just hits home with this idea that like it speaks to the goodness of people, like that there are people out there who are the unsung heroes who just want to help and just be a source of positivity and good in our world. And you know, and I so that's what I like, the idea of giving a platform for helper stories, you know, and just hearing where how did you get into this. So that's really all right. So you have been executive director for CIASP now for, you said three years?
Two.
Two. Okay.
2023. Yeah.
Talk to,
Not quite 2 years.
I've been volunteering with you now for probably 6 months. I think somewhere around there. And I love keeping up with your zany ideas. I think it's amazing. And part of the reason why is because it keeps getting back to this idea of like, how can we make all of these resources and all of these things that are out there for our industry, for construction, how can we streamline it and make it most effective for companies to engage with? And companies of any size. And I love that challenge because I came from a company that we were a mid-size electrical contractor, Midwest. We're a pretty typical construction story, and losing someone to suicide, we didn't know what to do in the moment. We needed something like what you're creating and what you know, the resources that you're making with, say, CIASP. So talk to me a little bit about what all CIASP does, and what is its mission?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a little history that has to happen there too.
Yep, do it.
This organization was well established before I got here. And we really grew out of the Construction Financial Management Association. And there was an article written, again, we're going to bring up the name,
Holy
but by
cow.
Cal Bayer and
Yep.
Dr. Sally Spencer Thomas
Hmm.
in their magazine Building Profits in 2015. And it really highlighted the growing problem of suicide in construction. And then right after that, the CDC report came out that said, you know, it kind of validated some of those findings. And then CFMA had a series of summits around the country for a couple of years and really started to say, like, this is a bigger problem than to be tucked up under one organization. And
Yeah.
so in 2018, we formed our own 501c3. And from
Hmm.
there, a group of volunteers from around the industry. Part of what makes, I think, CIASP unique is that it is for the industry by the industry, meaning it has always had contractors and associations and contractor adjacent or construction adjacent members as part of that board, and it's a working board. They have spent an enormous amount of time putting together a structure, putting together resources, and really holding up an organization, even through COVID, that was 100% volunteer while they were trying to run construction companies and
Mhm.
associations. And as we know, that there wasn't that downtime where they could focus on a nonprofit because construction were essential workers. So there, all of this was happening at the same time. And they really put together a beautiful set of resources that are 100% free to the industry. And they'll continue to be that. The mission is really to provide information and to continue to support with resources this industry.
Mhm.
And so, will continue to create things like we're talking about. And, you said that when you had a loss yourselves, that
Mhm.
there's so much information out there and it's in so many different places, and it's so hard to determine what is accurate and what is vetted and how to use it, that it's always been the goal to put everything in one place, right? Whether it's created by us or created somewhere else in the industry. We like to say that this isn't a competition and that there's no race to get there first. It's a race to be able to provide things to the industry because we need them. And so if we can take awareness resources and we can take intervention resources and even postvention resources and kind of call them and organize them and put them in one spot so that if a company is going through a crisis, they know where to find what they need.
Yeah.
They know that if they go right to our website, that everything they need will be right there. It'll be construction specific. It will have the information that they need, and it will apply to their workforce and their industry and what's happening for them.
Yeah.
And it will be created by someone who's been there.
Yeah. Yeah. So looking back on that, I remember that post like the week after when our company was going through the what do we do part of navigating all of that. And I remember just going out online and trying to find stuff. And like you said, a start there, it didn't really feel like there was a starting point. It was just there were just resources that were just sort of like out there, but trying to figure out like, okay, we want now we're in reactive mode. And I talk about that a lot, how companies are either blessed to be in proactive mode, but a lot of proactive is kind of hard in our industry because you get stuck behind the, well, it may not happen to us, and then it becomes almost an unproductive proactive where it's just like, hey, we're going to talk about this a little bit, but whatever. Or you end up where we were at, where we became reactive, and we were like, oh no, okay, it's we got to do something about this. But it ended up being at the cost of losing one of our workers that we actually got this program moving. The encouraging thing about what I believe CIASP is doing is that it is encouraging companies to make the most out of being proactive, like to give you all the resources and programming so that you can get ahead of these things of losing someone to suicide or losing somebody to overdose, and keeping those programs going and being proactive and confidently proactive, not like I'm just going to kick balling around. Because admittedly, we had a couple months where we were proactive before we lost our foreman, but we had no idea where to start. I had reached out to Cal, and he threw some resources to me, and we had started with that, but then it was just a couple months later that we ended up losing our foreman. So I'm so encouraged by that, by what your work is at CIASP, and also some of the work that can we talk about what I'm volunteering in? Are we allowed to talk about that? Can we talk about that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I
All right.
kind of did. I just didn't put a name to it.
It's out there. I know. So I've been for anybody listening. So I've been volunteering with CISP now for the last 6 months, and the project that we've been working on with our think tank has been a project called the Pathways Model. And the Pathways Model exists to be a roadmap for companies to build their program, to build a mental health and suicide prevention program at their company that doesn't just go for the focus months. You don't want to do the focus months of mental health month and suicide prevention month, but it's something that lives and breathes and needs to exist throughout the year, just like safety does. So this resource exists to provide that roadmap for companies, and so we're working on this thing. It's technically out, isn't it? Like you,
Yes, we
it's
launched the
posted it.
graphic. Yep.
Yeah. And so we're building out more functionality around it and ways for companies to engage with the model online. So we're working on that still. But talk a little bit about like what led you to like, hey, that was our first conversation. Was like you told me, hey, we're making this thing. Do you want to come be a part of it? And I was like, hell yeah, I want to be a part of it. That'd be awesome. And it has been just a joy to be a part of and build this thing. But what led to that, the creation of that model?
So I can't take credit for the vision. Michelle Walker, who is a founding board member for us, has always had this passion to create this space for people in the construction industry to have a pathway to building out this model, whether you are coming at it from, like I said, that intervention, the awareness, or that postvention piece, doesn't matter. Where you start that journey or where you kind of enter the roadmap, essentially doesn't make as much of a difference as what you can build from it. We know that each part matters in, how you get to the end of the journey, but it doesn't matter necessarily what brings you to that journey. And it really is about streamlining the process, taking what people make, as you touched on this, a priority during those special months and
Yeah.
turning it into a core value where it's not something that gets sort of dabbled with or set aside, but it is something that happens every day in your business. And
Yeah.
that's that you focus on mental health safety, just like you focus on physical safety. And you don't let them go at certain times, but they're always part of who you are in the fabric of your company.
Mm-hmm.
And allowing someone to, go in and have access to all of the resources in one place. And so if it's, we're setting it up to look a bit like a building site. And so you go in and there's buildings and you kind of build out your own program.
Mm-hmm.
You start with our needs analysis that allows you to say, this is what I have in place. This is what I'm missing. And where do I go to get it? And who's responsible for each piece of that? Because I think we all know that if there's not one person responsible for it, it's not really happening.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I love that because, for the listeners, for folks out there who maybe you're from a company and you haven't gotten started and you're like, I would love to do something. I talk to folks all the time where they're just like, oh man, I wanted to do this. I just didn't know where to start.
Right.
Or I didn't know like that there was stuff out there for this, or like things that I can share with company leadership to show them, hey, it's not a huge investment to get started, and this thing kind of explains that and shows you like, hey, you can get started with just like a pledge, do the needs analysis.
Free.
Yeah, the pledge is totally free as a company. Just go and say, hey, publicly, we're going to do this thing, and then the needs analysis to go see what do you currently have. A lot of folks don't even know what they actually have in their health insurance, life insurance policies, and what's already baked in. Yeah, so it gives you a good sort of walkthrough of what all do we currently have, and then you just go and start building. And those three, if you look at the picture, the actual display, and you see, we have kind of a awareness and education building. We have like a crisis intervention, the middle building, and then postvention building, and there's programming under each one of those. So for folks listening, like dive into this thing, the Pathways model. More is going to be rolling out on it, and we're really excited for folks to see it and use it.
Absolutely.
So
And it would be 100% free. That is one of our core values at CIASP, is that all of our materials will be free to the industry because we don't want the cost of a program to be the thing that keeps somebody from doing something. We're firm believers that everybody can do something in this cause to make a difference. And so we don't want the access to material or the access to structure to be the thing that keeps someone from starting a program.
yeah, it goes back to the idea that if you have a kernel of care for people around you in our industry, then that you can get started with just that. Like it doesn't take much. I think a lot of folks, I think we spend a lot of time for, like we've got to have CEO top down buy-in. We've got to have this. And I'm like, you know what, over at Mid City, they were bought in they just gave us permission to go build the program, and go be the voice of this thing. And I just want to like encourage folks that like, hey, you can just go talk to your and just get started, and that's what these resources are out there for, is to give you those free first steps to get going and get started. And I love that.
So we talk a lot about leadership buy-in, a lot. And, it's throughout our presentation. And, you just mentioned it now. Leadership doesn't necessarily have to be that upstream approach necessarily. Leadership can be anyone who has the title of a leader, but is also looked to as a leader, right? There's always that one person, whether it's in an office, whether it's on a job site, who people gravitate to because they're a natural leader. If that person starts talking about this, that starts the ship in motion.
That is a huge point. I want to punch that. That's a really good point, because I think a lot of folks, they think that, oh, I'm not the right person for this, when really they actually might be the best person.
You're the right person.
Yeah. If you have that charismatic care for people, and you want to like, you have that drive, no, you're the right person. You're the right. You have, sometimes folks have to get out of their own way to go and like accept and take on the mantle of being the advocate. And the companies that I've talked to, they're like, well, when do you get started? I'm like, who's your lead mental health advocate? Like, who's your person? I remember the church that I used to work for, the senior pastor was like, not every pastor should go and do hospital visits with families who are in crisis, because not every pastor is good at that. Like, to me, that the way I've kind of related that to our industry is, you don't have to have the CEO or the vice president out there talking about this thing if they're not the right person to talk about it. If they are, great. That's fantastic. Like, you've got like Vince down at Ajax down in Florida, who he's taken the mantle and he's going for it. And he's really representing that for CEOs. Find the people who are the right people to talk about it and empower them, give them those resources and the permission. So, and I love that CIASP gives them the tools they need to go make it happen. So I love it. I love the mission of it. How has so this is a movement that we're in that feels like it really hit traction a few years ago. It's work that's been going on for well over a decade, like you said, with Cal and Sally. But it feels like it really hit traction in the last 4 years, 4 or 5 years, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
How has that how has being in a well-being movement like this shaped you as a helper and an advocate, like personally?
Yeah, that's a great question and a hard one. How has it shaped me? I think that it would be really easy in this world to get caught up in the numbers and the dire circumstances and the despair that sometimes can happen from this. But I think the fact that the movement has gained momentum just continues to give me hope and continues to excite me about the opportunity for collaboration. And you see it happening all the time. I mean, if you just think about our think tank and the 12 people that, or the 10 people that sit there, or you think about the board, or the opportunities that we have that bring union and merit shop together. Suicide doesn't discriminate. It's beautiful to me to continue to see that when we talk about this, that what could be sort of fractious pieces of this industry don't discriminate when it comes to help and healing, right? And everybody's trying to move that mission forward, and they're doing it in different ways, but they're sharing and collaborating. And I feel like CIASP allows them to have sort of a middle ground to do that to a degree. I am privileged to get to work with, people at ABC and AGC and the unions. And so it's the hope piece of it, I think, for me. And that's what shapes me, is that collaboration and those helpers.
Yeah, it breaks down so much partisanship. And
It does.
It bypasses politics, both literal, like world politics, as well as like industry politics. To me, this is a common ground, and I love that. And that, to me, like, again, like what you just said, is what I've seen time and time again when we like put peer support together. on the ground level. Under one roof, I've got folks who I know if you were to start busting out different topics, there'd be disagreements. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt. But when you get everybody in a room under one roof and they're unified by this mission to help, how powerful is that? I mean, that's
Exactly.
Can you, I mean, imagine a movement taking off like this, that born out of construction, but I can see it absolutely going nationwide and many industries of just empowering people to just help and be there for their fellow man. I mean, just, I don't know. That to me is so powerful. So I share that with you. And that's why I asked that question, because I want people to feel invited into that.
Right. And again, I said it before, but anyone can do something in this space. You don't have to feel like you have to have letters behind your name, or you have to have a certain degree, or you have to be at a certain level of your company or leadership. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Do you know what my degree is?
What's that?
Do you know what it is? Did
Is
I ever
it
tell you?
ministry? Is it in
It's
ministry?
from a
Did you
Bible
get
college, but
Bible? Yeah.
my bachelor's degree, and this is the point I'm trying to make here. My bachelor's degree is in vocal performance. I'm operatically trained.
Stop it.
So the way I graduated was by singing an hour-long recital in German, Italian, and Latin, and Old English.
That's a cool fun fact.
And guess how much I actually use that degree?
I was gonna say maybe Sundays in the choir.
Embarrassing my family at Italian restaurants, like that kind of stuff. That's about the extent of that. Now, that being, I mean, I project, I use my voice a lot. I know how to use my voice and all of that. But I say that to say that for anybody who's just like, well, I don't have a degree in this. I don't have like the letters. I don't have it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't.
Right?
If you care for people and you have drive and belief in this thing, that's all you need.
Being a helper can mean so many different things. I think it's really important that you don't have to do what you and I do. I could talk to the brick wall in front of me. I was on the speech and debate team in college, and so my kids call it nerd club.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's where I'm comfortable. That's the space that I enjoy to be in.
Right.
But that may not be the space that someone else enjoys to be in.
Yeah.
So if you can't do that, or if you don't feel like there's a place for you doing that, do something as simple as sharing a post on LinkedIn, or finding an organization that you align with and supporting that organization, whether it's us or a CPWR or NCCER or Safe Project or whatever it is. There's so many wonderful organizations out there that are doing this. Align with somebody and share their posts, or post yourself, or go out and do a walk or a run or, a golf tournament, etc.
There are so many on-ramps to this.
Yes.
And I think just it takes invitation for folks to get onto that on-ramp. I think just left to their own devices, a lot of folks just carry on with life. It's the grind of life. It's the paychecks. It's the just survive. And I think it's so powerful to empower people that, like, none of that stuff's going to go away. The grind of life, yes, we still have to do paycheck. We still have to take care of our families. We still got to do all of this. But when you infuse purpose and mission into the grind, that adds a whole new element of purpose that I think a lot of us are looking for. I think a lot of people are looking for that.
You find a new community too.
Yes.
You find your people.
Yeah. And that's it. That was kind of part of it. And why I wanted to start the podcast is like, I like talking to my people. I like to talk to my circle, and I have these conversations all the time that are so, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. And I want to share this with people because I think people need to feel invited, and that they have a place at the table too.
They do. Yep.
Oh man.
Community.
I love that. Yeah. Community is powerful. It's, all right. What do you think? And this is the dream. I always like to incorporate a part of the conversation that kind of dreams, like, what does the future look like? Like, what, all of this time and effort and energy. And I think, what are the three, time, talent, and treasure?
Talent and treasure.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we put forth the time, the talent, and the treasure into a movement like this, and what we're seeing. What does the industry of tomorrow look like because of this? And I know that part of the mission of CIASP is a zero suicide industry,
A vision, yeah.
that's the vision. That's the vision
Mm-hmm.
statement, which again, vision is big, audacious goal that seems impossible right now, but you break it up into the mission and you make it happen. You keep pushing that for that picture. But tangibly, what else? What does the picture look like to you for our industry and maybe other industries like it?
I love my job, but the picture is that I don't have one because it doesn't need to exist, right? Like that would be, that would be the pie in the sky, right? Is that we have a zero suicide industry,
Mm-hmm.
or that we have at least equalized the suicide rates in construction with the rest of the national average. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of people moving in the same direction. Um, I think the first bite, right? How do you eat an elephant? That first bite is at least starting to change the numbers in a positive direction.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that would mean that we are succeeding, right?
Yeah.
And then we start incrementally getting there and pushing to get ourselves to that zero suicide industry.
Yeah. Yep. I was so encouraged when the numbers came out, at least in the state of Ohio. And I know that Richard, with U-Turn Health.
Rich Jones.
Rich Jones, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
He posted the other day, like, a lot of folks got really excited to see that the overdose numbers were turning around, but in our industry, they still technically were going up, but nationwide they were going down, and a lot of that was attributed to the, easy access to naloxone, stuff like that. So, it's to me, if you think about the traction of the last 4 years of pushing up against generations of culture and risk factors that have led to this. We've got so much work to do, and we need so many more people at the table. I think that's like what you said. Like we've just got to see those numbers start turning around, and that's like when we start seeing the picture of that, those numbers start to equalize, and we see that like we're an industry that has built a culture of care, not just company by company, but industry wide.
I would be happy if we would just stop whispering about mental health and suicide prevention. If we can get to the place where we talk freely about cardiovascular disease, or we talk about cancer. If we can start talking about mental health in that way, I think that would be a leap in the right direction.
I remember we had somebody in the office who had cancer. And I remember folks were coming up and talking to her about that because that's become normalized to talk about, like it's just like that's just it's a thing that people go through. It's horrible. My life's been impacted by it, but it's not weird to talk about it anymore. We got to get to the point in our industry where it's just not weird to talk about. Give us a signing off word of advice for the person who's just. They're still on the fringes. They're looking for purpose. They don't want to just live for the paycheck. That's necessary, but they want something deeper than that and bigger than that. Give them that. What's that first step that you would give to somebody, that you would tell somebody, hey, like for diving into something like advocacy or helping folks, like what's that first step?
In an organization that you align with. That's step one, I would say. And then, make it really simple. Just start following them on social media, start liking and sharing, and then create your own post. Start there. It's easy. It has a little bit of a comfort zone because you're not putting yourself fully out there. But become an ally first, and then become an advocate.
I love it. That's so good. Mm-hmm. Sonya, thank you so much for being on today.
I'm excited to have had this conversation.
You are a breath of fresh air of authenticity and realness in this space, and just the passion that you bring to it, the story that you have of following those little universe signs that were showing you, hey, like, no, this needs to be part of your story and part of your future, and you. Acting on that is so inspirational and so powerful, and I hope that people hear this and start doing that themselves.
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate it. And I love this conversation.
Yes, I did as well. All right. So for any of you guys listening, go on to preventconstructionsuicide.com is Construction Industry Alliance for Suicide Prevention's website. Go check it out. Look at the resources. Get started. Reach out. Follow Sonya on LinkedIn and socials, and CIASP on LinkedIn and socials, and then just get involved. And we'll see you on the next episode. See ya.